The Friday night lights of Clearwater High blazed against the October sky like beacons of small-town pride. The air was thick with humidity, carrying the scent of freshly cut grass mixed with popcorn and hot dogs from the concession stands. Parents filled the metal bleachers, their cheers echoing across the football field as the Clearwater Dolphins fought for another home victory. It was October 14, 2011, and 17-year-old Emily Harper stood at the sidelines, her blue and white uniform shimmering under the stadium lights, her blonde ponytail bouncing with each perfectly executed cheer routine. Emily was everything Clearwater High celebrated: bright, athletic, and genuinely kind. She wasn't the stereotypical mean girl you'd see in movies. Teachers praised her academic dedication, teammates admired her loyalty, and her parents, David and Susan Harper, considered her their miracle. She'd been their only child after years of trying, and they treasured every moment with her. "Go Dolphins, push 'em back, way back." Emily's voice rang out clear and confident, leading her squad through the final cheer of the night. Her best friend, Madison Torres, stood beside her, matching every move with practiced precision. The two had been inseparable since middle school, sharing everything from lip gloss to college dreams. The scoreboard read 28-21. The Dolphins had won again. The crowd erupted in celebration and Emily's face lit up with genuine joy. She high-fived Madison, both girls breathless and laughing as the team rushed past them toward the locker rooms. "That was incredible," Madison shouted over the noise, grabbing Emily's hand. "Did you see Jake watching you during the third quarter? He couldn't take his eyes off you." Emily blushed, glancing toward Jake Morrison, the quarterback whose jersey number matched his popularity level. Number 1. "Stop it, Maddie." He was focused on the game. "Girl, please. That boy has been crushing on you since sophomore year. When are you going to give him a chance?" Emily smiled but didn't answer. She had bigger dreams than high school romance. College scholarships, maybe journalism school in Miami, seeing the world beyond Clearwater's palm tree-lined streets. She'd even started a blog about local community issues, gaining modest attention from readers across Pinellas County. "Come on, let's get changed," Emily said, pulling Madison toward the gymnasium where their bags were stored. The field was emptying quickly now, families streaming toward the parking lot, car engines starting up one by one. Coach Reynolds was already herding the football team inside, his whistle hanging around his neck like a badge of authority. Inside the gym, the fluorescent lights hummed softly. The space smelled of rubber mats and teenage sweat, a scent that had become oddly comforting over 3 years of practices and pep rallies. Emily's locker was in the far corner, decorated with photos of her squad and a small mirror where she'd written "Dream Big" in blue marker. Madison grabbed her duffel bag first. "My mom's picking me up in 5. You need a ride?" Emily shook her head. "Dad's coming. He texted during halftime. Should be here any minute." "Okay, text me when you get home. We need to plan what we're wearing to Brittany's party tomorrow." "Will do." Emily hugged her friend quickly, watching as Madison jogged out through the side exit, her footsteps echoing in the nearly empty hallway. Now alone, Emily changed out of her uniform, carefully folding the blue top and white skirt into her bag. She pulled on gray sweatpants and a Clearwater High hoodie, her usual post-game comfort clothes. Checking her phone, she saw a text from her dad. "Running 10 min late, sweetie. Car wouldn't start. Be there soon. Stay inside." Emily typed back a quick okay with a smiley face emoji. She sat on the wooden bench, scrolling through Instagram, smiling at photos her teammates had already posted from the game. The gym had grown quiet, almost eerily so. The janitor, Mr. Peterson, usually worked late on game nights, but she didn't hear his familiar cart rolling through the halls. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Emily stood up, stretching her legs. The silence was beginning to feel heavy, oppressive. She walked to the side exit where Madison had left, pushing open the metal door. The October night air hit her face, cooler now, carrying the salt tang of the Gulf of Mexico just a few miles away. The parking lot was nearly empty. Just a few scattered cars remained, their owners probably coaches or staff members finishing paperwork. Emily checked her phone again. No new messages. She tried calling her dad. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. "Hey Dad, just checking in. I'm outside the gym, call me back." She stood there, backpack slung over one shoulder, gym bag in her other hand, illuminated by the single lamppost near the exit. Moths circled the light frantically, casting strange shadows on the pavement. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. Emily glanced at her watch. 10:47 p.m. A dark sedan pulled into the parking lot, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Emily felt relief flood through her, finally. But as the car approached, she realized it wasn't her dad's silver Honda. This was a black Nissan, unfamiliar. The vehicle slowed as it neared her and the driver's window rolled down. "Emily Harper?" a man's voice called out. Emily took an instinctive step back. "Who's asking?" The man leaned slightly out the window. He appeared to be in his late 30s, wearing a button-down shirt, his face partially shadowed. "I'm Detective Walsh with the Clearwater Police. There's been an accident involving your parents. I need to take you to the hospital right away." Emily's heart stopped. The world seemed to tilt. "What? What happened? Is my dad okay?" "Ma'am, please get in the car. I'll explain everything on the way. We need to hurry." Every instinct screamed at Emily to run, to call someone, to verify this man's identity. But fear for her parents overrode everything else. She'd heard her dad's car wouldn't start. What if he'd gotten into an accident on the way? What if her mom had been with him? "Show me your badge," Emily managed to say, her voice shaking. The man held up what looked like a police badge, the metal glinting in the lamplight. It happened so fast Emily couldn't read the details. Her mind was racing, panic clouding her judgment. "Please, Emily. Every second counts." She took 3 steps toward the car, then 4. Her hand reached for the door handle. Behind her, another car pulled into the parking lot. Emily turned, hoping desperately it was her father. But it was just another parent, probably picking up a late-working teacher. The headlights swept across the scene, illuminating Emily standing by the black Nissan for just a moment. When she turned back, the man was already opening the passenger door from inside. "Get in." Emily Harper climbed into the car. The door slammed shut. Within seconds, the Nissan's engine roared to life and the vehicle sped out of the parking lot, turning left onto Gulf to Bay Boulevard, disappearing into the Florida night. At 11:03 p.m., David Harper arrived at Clearwater High School. His Honda, finally running after his neighbor, helped jumpstart the battery. He parked near the gymnasium entrance, searching for his daughter. The parking lot was empty. The lights were off inside the building. Emily was gone. He called her phone. It rang and rang, but no one answered. By midnight, Susan and David Harper stood in their living room, surrounded by police officers taking notes. By 1 a.m., Emily's face was being shared across social media. By dawn, search teams were assembling. Emily Harper had vanished without a trace, as if the earth itself had swallowed her whole. And for 13 years, the truth of what happened that October night would remain buried, until a single moment of recognition in a Tallahassee shelter would finally crack open the darkest mystery in Clearwater's history. But that revelation was still years away, waiting like a secret too terrible to imagine. The morning sun rose over Clearwater on October 15, 2011. But for the Harper family, darkness had only deepened. Susan Harper sat motionless at her kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a coffee mug that had gone cold hours ago. Her eyes were red and swollen, fixed on Emily's senior portrait hanging on the wall. That radiant smile, those bright blue eyes full of hope and dreams. David paced the living room like a caged animal, his phone pressed to his ear as he spoke with Detective Raymond Kowalski for the 4th time that morning. "What do you mean you need to wait 24 hours? David's voice cracked with desperation. "My daughter is missing. She didn't run away. Emily would never—" "Mr. Harper, I understand your fear," Detective Kowalski interrupted, his tone measured but firm. He was a 20-year veteran of the Clearwater Police Department, a stocky man in his 50s with graying hair and eyes that had seen too much. But statistically, most missing teenagers return within 48 hours. We have officers reviewing security footage from the school. We're checking her phone records. We're doing everything we can. Everything you can? David's voice rose. My daughter got into a car with a man claiming to be a police detective. Someone used your department to kidnap her. How is that not an emergency? Kowalski's jaw tightened. That detail troubled him more than he'd admit. The parent who'd witnessed Emily getting into the black Nissan had provided a statement around 2:08 a.m. Jennifer Mills, mother of a Clearwater High sophomore, had been picking up her son from a late study session when she'd seen the cheerleader standing by an unfamiliar vehicle. She'd noticed Emily seeming hesitant, then getting in. Mrs. Mills hadn't thought much of it at the time. She'd assumed it was a family member or friend. It was only when she'd seen the missing person alert on Facebook that the memory had crystallized into something sinister. We're treating this as a critical investigation, Kowalski assured David. I've already contacted the FBI's Tampa field office. If Emily was taken across state lines, this becomes a federal case. We're also issuing an Amber Alert within the hour. David wanted to scream, to demand why the alert hadn't gone out immediately. but he knew arguing wouldn't bring Emily home. "Thank you," he managed, his voice hollow. "Just find her, please." By 9 a.m., Clearwater High School had transformed into Command Central. Principal Margaret Sutton had opened the cafeteria to volunteers, and the response was overwhelming. Students, parents, teachers, local business owners, they came in waves, desperate to help. Madison Torres arrived with her entire family, her eyes puffy from crying all night. Jake Morrison, still wearing his Letterman jacket, organized the football team into search groups. Even rival schools sent representatives. Coach Reynolds stood at the front of the cafeteria, a large map of Clearwater and surrounding areas spread across a table. Red circles marked key locations. The high school, Emily's house on Sunset Point Road, her favorite coffee shop downtown, the beach where she and Madison spent summer afternoons. "Listen up, everyone," Reynolds called out, his voice commanding attention. "We're dividing into teams of 4. No one searches alone. Stay in contact via cell phone. If you find anything, and I mean anything unusual, you call Detective Kowalski immediately. Do not touch evidence. Am I clear?" A chorus of "Yes, sir" echoed through the cafeteria. Madison approached Susan Harper, who had finally left her kitchen table to join the search efforts. "Mrs. Harper," Madison said softly, tears streaming down her face. "I should have waited with her. I should have—" Susan pulled the girl into a fierce embrace. "This is not your fault, sweetheart, you hear me? Not your fault." But Madison couldn't stop the guilt. She'd been the last friend to see Emily. That fact would haunt her for years to come. The search teams fanned out across Clearwater like a human net. Group 1 took the beach areas along the Gulf, walking the sandy shores, checking under piers and abandoned lifeguard stations. The October sun beat down mercilessly, humidity making every breath feel thick. They found discarded beer cans, lost flip-flops, a child's plastic shovel, but no sign of Emily Harper. Group 2 covered Coachman Park and the marina, questioning boat owners and early morning joggers. Had anyone seen a teenage girl, blonde, 5'6", possibly distressed? Headshakes and sympathetic frowns were the only responses. Group 3, led by Jake Morrison, tackled the more challenging terrain, the mangrove swamps and nature preserves on Clearwater's outskirts. The twisted roots and murky water created an almost impenetrable landscape. Jake pushed through waist-high water, his mind replaying every interaction he'd had with Emily. Why hadn't he asked her out sooner? Why had he wasted so much time being scared of rejection? "Over here!" someone shouted from Group 3. Jake's heart stopped. He rushed toward the voice, nearly tripping over a submerged log. Tommy Chen, a defensive lineman, stood pointing at something caught in the mangrove roots. A piece of fabric, blue and white, the colors of Clearwater High. Is that part of her uniform?" Tommy whispered. Jake carefully extracted the fabric. It was small, maybe 3 inches square, torn from something larger. His hands trembled as he pulled out his phone and called Detective Kowalski. Within 30 minutes, a forensics team arrived at the swamp location. They photographed the fabric from every angle, bagged it as evidence, and expanded the search radius around where it was found. David and Susan Harper drove out immediately, hope and terror warring in their expressions. "Is it hers?" David asked desperately. Kowalski held up the evidence bag. The fabric was definitely from a cheerleading uniform, but it could have been lost during any number of previous activities. The team practiced near these areas occasionally. Still, its discovery shifted the investigation's focus. "We're bringing in search dogs," Kowalski explained. "If Emily came through here, they'll pick up her scent." By afternoon, 3 bloodhounds arrived from the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. Their handler, Officer Lisa Mendoza, gave the dogs items from Emily's bedroom, a pillowcase, a worn t-shirt. The dogs sniffed eagerly, then began working the area where the fabric was found. They circled, whined, moved in seemingly random patterns, then nothing. The trail went cold. It was as if Emily had simply evaporated. "That doesn't make sense," Mendoza said, frustration evident in her voice. "If she'd been through here recently, these dogs would find something. Either she wasn't here, or what?" Susan Harper's voice was barely a whisper. Mendoza didn't finish the thought. The alternatives were too grim. As evening approached, the search teams regrouped at the high school, exhausted and discouraged. Over 200 people had combed through Clearwater's landscape, but Emily remained missing. Local news vans had set up outside the school, reporters eager for updates. The story was already gaining traction. "Cheerleader vanishes after football game" made for compelling headlines. Detective Kowalski held a press conference at 7 p.m. Cameras flashed as he stood before microphones, the Harper family seated behind him, David's arm around Susan's shoulders. Emily Harper, age 17, disappeared last night between 10:45 and 11 p.m. from Clearwater High School. She was last seen wearing gray sweatpants and a maroon Clearwater High hoodie. Emily is 5'6", approximately 125 pounds, with blonde hair and blue eyes. We believe she may have been approached by someone impersonating a law enforcement officer. We urge anyone with information to contact the Clearwater Police Department immediately. A $10,000 reward is being offered for information leading to Emily's safe return. Reporters shouted questions simultaneously. Do you suspect foul play? Was this a targeted abduction? Are there any suspects? Kowalski raised his hand for silence. This is an active investigation. That's all I can share at this time. Susan Harper leaned forward to the microphones, her voice breaking. Emily, if you can hear this, baby, please come home. We love you so much. Whatever happened, whatever you're going through, we just want you safe. Please. She couldn't continue. David gently pulled her back, his own tears flowing freely now. That night, Clearwater felt different. Doors that were usually left unlocked were bolted shut. Parents who normally gave their teenagers freedom imposed strict curfews. The sense of small-town safety had been shattered. If Emily Harper, beloved, responsible, careful Emily, could vanish in minutes, then no one was truly safe. In their home, the Harpers sat in Emily's bedroom, surrounded by her belongings. Posters of her favorite bands covered the walls. Her laptop sat closed on her desk, its screensaver a photo of her and Madison making silly faces. Her cheerleading trophies lined a shelf, catching the lamplight like small golden monuments to a life interrupted. She was going to apply to the University of Miami, Susan said softly, touching Emily's journal. Jing. She wanted to study journalism, maybe work for a major newspaper someday. She had so many plans. David pulled his wife close. She still has those plans. We will find her. Do you hear me? We will bring our daughter home. But even as he said the words, doubt gnawed at him. The black Nissan had disappeared without a trace. No security cameras had captured a clear license plate. The man claiming to be Detective Walsh didn't exist in any law enforcement database. Whoever had taken Emily had planned this carefully. And somewhere in the darkness, Emily Harper was beginning to realize that the nightmare was only just starting, that the life she'd known, the future she'd dreamed of, had been stolen in the span of a few terrible seconds. The search would continue for weeks, then months, then years. But that October night in 2011, as Clearwater struggled to comprehend the incomprehensible, one truth became painfully clear. Emily Harper had become a ghost, a mystery that would haunt every person who'd known her, every volunteer who'd searched for her, every parent who looked at their own children and whispered silent prayers of gratitude. The town would never be the same. Neither would the Harper family. And Emily, wherever she was learning that monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like saviors. The first year after Emily's disappearance was a blur of false hope and crushing disappointment. Every phone call sent the Harpers' hearts racing. Every tip, every supposed sighting, every psychic claiming to know Emily's location. They chased them all with desperate determination. But each lead evaporated like morning fog, leaving nothing but emptiness behind. Detective Kowalski had seen cases like this before, though he'd never admitted to the grieving parents sitting across from his desk during their weekly meetings. Statistics were cruel. When a teenage girl disappeared under suspicious circumstances, the odds of finding her alive dropped precipitously with each passing day. After the first 72 hours, the probability plummeted. After a week, it became a recovery mission more than a rescue. After a year, most cases went cold, filed away in boxes, assigned to overworked detectives juggling dozens of unsolved crimes. But Raymond Kowalski couldn't let this one go. Something about Emily Harper's case gnawed at him during sleepless nights. The calculated nature of the abduction, the fake police credentials, the timing, the complete absence of physical evidence, suggested someone who'd planned this meticulously. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. This was predatory, patient, and terrifyingly precise. By 2012, the investigation had expanded beyond Clearwater. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit created a profile of Emily's abductor, likely a white male, aged 35 to 50, with possible law enforcement or military background given his knowledge of police procedures. He'd be organized, intelligent, living alone or with someone he could control. He might have attempted similar abductions before, perhaps in other states, which is why the FBI cross-referenced Emily's case with unsolved disappearances across the Southeast. They found 3 cases with disturbing similarities. A 16-year-old cheerleader vanished from a football game in Mobile, Alabama in 2008. A 17-year-old honor student disappeared from a shopping mall parking lot in Savannah, Georgia in 2009. A 15-year-old volleyball player went missing after practice in Biloxi, Mississippi in 2010. All blonde, all athletic, all seemingly approached by someone claiming to be law enforcement or security. None of them were ever found. Agent Patricia Reeves from the FBI's Tampa office became deeply invested in connecting these cases. A sharp woman in her early 40s with short dark hair and relentless determination, she visited the Harpers monthly, updating them on investigative developments even when there weren't any. She believed in giving families truth, even when truth was painful. "We think we're looking for a serial predator," Reeves told David and Susan during a meeting in early 2013, 2 years after Emily's disappearance. "Someone who targets teenage girls in coastal communities. The geographical pattern suggests he might be mobile, possibly working in sales, trucking, or another profession that requires regional travel." Susan's face had aged a decade in 2 years. Her hair, once vibrant brown, was now streaked with gray. She'd lost weight, her clothes hanging loose on her frame. But Emily could still be alive. These other girls, they could all still be alive. Reeves chose her words carefully. "It's possible. Some predators keep victims for extended periods. We haven't found remains, which could be significant." David understood what the agent wasn't saying, that no remains could also mean the girls were disposed of in ways that prevented discovery. The Gulf of Mexico was vast and unforgiving. The swamps and forests of the South could hide secrets forever. "We won't stop looking," Reeves assured them. "I promise you that." But promises, no matter how sincere, couldn't fill the hole in the Harpers' lives. Madison Torres struggled through her senior year in college with survivor's guilt that threatened to consume her. She'd been the last person to see Emily before the abduction, a fact that her therapist kept insisting wasn't her responsibility to carry. But Madison couldn't shake the feeling that if she'd just stayed those extra 10 minutes, if she'd waited with Emily for her father, everything would be different. She threw herself into advocacy work, volunteering with organizations supporting families of missing persons. She spoke at high schools about safety awareness, her voice steady even as her hands trembled. "Don't get into cars with strangers," she'd tell auditoriums full of teenagers. "Even if they claim to be police, always verify. Always call for confirmation." Emily didn't have that chance to think clearly. Fear overrode her judgment. Don't let that happen to you. Jake Morrison went to the University of South Florida on a football scholarship, but his heart wasn't in it anymore. The game that had once been his passion now reminded him only of loss. He'd visit the Harpers every time he came home, sitting in their living room sharing stories about Emily that made Susan laugh through tears. He never dated seriously in college. How could he, when the girl he'd secretly loved had been stolen from the world before he'd found the courage to tell her? Clearwater tried to move forward, but Emily's absence was a constant presence. Her face stared out from missing person posters on telephone poles and community bulletin boards, the image fading in the Florida sun, but never quite disappearing. The high school established the Emily Harper Memorial Scholarship, awarded annually to a student pursuing journalism. Her blog remained online, a digital monument to dreams interrupted. The last post dated October 13th, 2011, one day before she vanished. Every October 14th, a candlelight vigil was held at Clearwater High. Hundreds gathered year after year to remember Emily and keep hope alive. Susan and David attended every single one, holding candles with shaking hands, thanking the community for not forgetting their daughter. But as the years accumulated, 3, 5, 7, 10, the crowds grew smaller. New tragedies captured attention. Life moved on, as life inevitably does, leaving the Harpers stranded in a perpetual October 2011, unable to move forward, unable to find closure. Detective Kowalski retired in 2018, but he gave the Harper case files to Detective Sarah Chen, a young investigator with fresh eyes and modern techniques. Chen immediately began digitizing everything, uploading evidence photos to facial recognition databases, resubmitting DNA samples for analysis with new technology that hadn't existed in 2011. "I know this case is old," Chen told the Harpers during their first meeting, "but I don't believe in cold cases, just cases waiting for the right piece of information." David, now 63 and walking with a slight limp from a minor stroke he'd suffered in 2020, gripped Chen's hand. "Thank you. Just thank you for caring." Chen meant what she said. She spent lunch breaks reviewing interview transcripts, noting inconsistencies others had missed. She traveled to Alabama, Georgia, and Mississippi, re-interviewing witnesses from those similar abduction cases. She built a timeline, a map, a profile more detailed than anything previously compiled. And in 2022, she got a hit. A black Nissan Altima registered to a Robert Pearson had been ticketed for a broken taillight in Clearwater on October 18, 2011, 4 days after Emily's disappearance. Traffic camera footage from that stop showed a middle-aged white male alone in the vehicle. The ticket had been paid promptly, and Pearson had no criminal record, which is why he'd never appeared on investigative radar before. But Chen ran his information through newer databases and found something interesting. Pearson worked for a medical supply company in 2011, traveling throughout Florida, Alabama, Georgia, and Mississippi, the exact region where the similar abductions had occurred. Chen's pulse quickened as she dug deeper. Pearson had moved to North Carolina in 2012, then Tennessee in 2015, always staying just ahead of close scrutiny. He was currently living in Tallahassee, working as a warehouse manager. No arrests, no complaints, nothing to suggest he was anything other than an ordinary middle-aged man living a quiet life. But Chen had learned that monsters rarely looked like monsters. She presented her findings to the FBI, and Agent Reeves, still working the case despite the passage of time, immediately recognized the significance. They couldn't arrest Pearson without more evidence, but they could surveil him, obtain warrants for his financial records, his communications, his property. What they discovered was chilling in its ordinariness. Pearson lived alone in a modest house on Tallahassee's east side. He went to work, came home, kept to himself. Neighbors described him as nice enough but private. His internet history showed nothing illegal, just sports websites, news articles, online shopping. His bank records revealed regular income and unremarkable expenses. But then, in March 2024, something changed. Pearson made a $300 cash withdrawal, unusual for someone who typically used credit cards for everything. Surveillance teams followed him to a women's shelter called Safe Harbor House in downtown Tallahassee. He dropped off the cash as an anonymous donation, then left immediately. Why would he do that? Chen asked Reeves as they reviewed surveillance footage. Guilt, maybe, Reeves suggested. Or control. Some predators enjoy proximity to their crimes. It feeds their sense of power. Or, Chen said slowly, a theory forming, maybe someone he was controlling escaped. Maybe she's in that shelter. The two women locked eyes, the same impossible hope flooding through them simultaneously. "We need a warrant to access their resident list," Reeves said. "But these shelters protect women's identities. Getting that information could take weeks." Chen grabbed her jacket. "Then we start by showing Emily's photo to staff. Someone might recognize her." On March 15, 2024, 12 years, 5 months, and 1 day after Emily Harper was last seen leaving Clearwater High School, Detective Sarah Chen and Agent Patricia Reeves walked into Safe Harbor House carrying a folder of missing person photos. The shelter director, a compassionate woman named Carol Martinez, agreed to look at the images, though she was careful to explain confidentiality protocols. Chen showed her photos of Emily at 17, then age-progressed images created by forensic artists showing what Emily might look like at 29. Martinez's face went pale. "Oh my God, you recognize her?" Reeves leaned forward. "We have a resident. She checked in 2 weeks ago. No ID, no family. Said she'd been living with someone who'd convinced her everyone she knew was dead. She's been through severe trauma. We've been working with social services to establish her identity because she couldn't remember her last name clearly. She just keeps saying, Harper, maybe Harper." The room seemed to tilt. Chen's hands shook as she pulled out her phone. "Can we see her? Can we talk to her?" Martinez hesitated. "She's very fragile. She has panic attacks if men are nearby. She doesn't trust easily. I need to prepare her, explain who you are." "We can bring her parents," Chen said. "David and Susan Harper. They've waited 13 years. Please." Martinez nodded slowly. "Give me 1 hour. Let me talk to her first." That hour felt like a lifetime. Chen called the Harpers, struggling to keep her voice professional as she explained the possibility, not a certainty, not yet, but a chance, that their daughter had been found. Susan's scream of shock could be heard through the phone. David wept openly. We're coming right now. They made the 4-hour drive from Clearwater to Tallahassee in just over 3 hours, David pushing the speed limit, Susan praying aloud the entire way. Chen and Reeves waited at the shelter, pacing, checking their watches, wondering if this could really be happening. When the Harpers arrived, they looked as terrified as they were hopeful. Susan's hands wouldn't stop shaking. David kept touching his chest as if to verify his heart was still beating. Martinez led them to a small meeting room. She's agreed to see you, but please move slowly. Don't overwhelm her. She's been through more than any person should endure. The door opened, and there she stood, 29 years old, painfully thin, with haunted blue eyes and blonde hair cut short. She wore donated clothes 2 sizes too big, her hands twisted together nervously. She looked at Susan and David with an expression of desperate hope mixed with disbelief. Mom? The word came out broken, uncertain. Dad? Susan's legs gave out. David caught her, and together they moved toward the daughter they'd lost 13 years ago. Emily collapsed into their arms, sobbing with a grief and relief so profound that everyone in the room wept with her. You're alive, Susan kept repeating, as if saying it would make it permanently true. You're alive. You're alive. I thought you were dead, Emily whispered. He told me you were dead. He said you'd been in a car accident, that I had no one, that he was saving me. I believed him. For so long, I believed him. DNA tests would confirm what everyone in that room already knew. Emily Harper had been found. The impossible had happened. But the story of those 13 missing years, the psychological torture, the manipulation, the survival, that was still to come. The small interview room at the Tallahassee Police Department felt both sterile and suffocating. Cream-colored walls, a metal table bolted to the floor, 3 chairs and a camera mounted in the corner, its red light indicating everything was being recorded. Emily Harper sat across from Detective Sarah Chen and FBI agent Patricia Reeves, her parents just outside the door at her request. She'd asked for time to tell her story without seeing their reactions, without witnessing their pain as she described the 13 years that had been stolen from her. Emily looked different from the photographs that had circulated for over a decade. The softness of youth had been carved away by trauma, leaving sharp cheekbones and eyes that seemed decades older than her 29 years. Her hands trembled slightly as she wrapped them around a styrofoam cup of tea, seeking comfort in its warmth. Take your time, Chen said gently, her voice steady but her heart breaking for this woman who'd survived what should have destroyed her. We're not in any rush. Just tell us what you remember, in your own words. Emily took a deep breath, and when she spoke, her voice was quiet but surprisingly strong. The voice of someone who'd decided that silence had protected her captor long enough. His name is Robert Pearson. At least, that's what he told me. I don't know if it's real. She paused, gathering her thoughts. That night, October 14th, 2011, I was waiting outside the gym for my dad. I was texting, not really paying attention. Then this car pulled up, and he said there'd been an accident. He said my parents had been in a terrible crash, that they were at the hospital, that I needed to come immediately. Did he show you identification? Reeves asked. Emily nodded, shame coloring her cheeks. He had a badge. It looked real to me, but I was panicking. I wasn't thinking clearly. All I could think was that my parents were hurt or dying, and I needed to get to them. So I got in the car. The decision that had haunted her for 13 years, spoken aloud for the first time to people who wouldn't judge her for it. What happened next? Chen prompted. We drove for maybe 5 minutes. I kept asking which hospital, how bad the accident was, if my parents were okay. He wouldn't answer directly, just kept saying, "We'll be there soon," and try to stay calm. Then we pulled into this empty parking lot behind an abandoned warehouse. I started to get scared. I reached for the door handle, but he'd engaged the child locks. I couldn't get out. Emily's voice caught and she took another sip of tea. Reeves pushed a box of tissues across the table, which Emily accepted with a nod of gratitude. He turned to me and said, "Emily, I'm sorry, but I lied. Your parents aren't at the hospital. They're dead. The accident was fatal. I'm the only one who can take care of you now." I screamed. I tried to fight him, but he was so much stronger. He pulled out a cloth, I think it had chloroform or something on it, and pressed it to my face. Everything went black. Chen and Reeves exchanged glances. The premeditated nature of the abduction was becoming horrifyingly clear. When I woke up, Emily continued, her voice dropping to almost a whisper, I was in a basement, not dirty or scary like you see in movies. It was actually finished, with carpet and painted walls, almost like a small apartment. There was a bed, a bathroom, even a small kitchenette, but the door was locked from the outside and the single window was covered with bars. Where was this basement located? Chen asked. I don't know. I never saw the outside of the house until recently. But based on how long we drove when he finally moved me, I think it was somewhere near Clearwater initially. Maybe Plant City or Lakeland, somewhere rural. Reeves made notes rapidly. They'd need to cross-reference Pearson's known addresses with rural properties in those areas from 2011 to 2012. Emily continued, her words coming faster now, as if a dam had broken. For the first few months, I fought him constantly. I screamed, I threw things, I tried to hurt him whenever he came down with food, but he never hit me. Never. That was the strange part. He'd sit in a chair by the door and talk to me in this calm, patient voice. He'd say things like, I know you're angry, Emily. I know this is hard, but your parents are gone, and I'm protecting you now. The world up there is dangerous. People would hurt you. I'm keeping you safe. Psychological manipulation, Reeves murmured. Classic technique used by captors to break down resistance and create dependency. Emily nodded bitterly. It worked. God help me. It worked. After about 6 months, I was so exhausted from fighting, so worn down from being alone in that basement that I started listening to him. He'd bring me books, magazines, even a small TV with no cable. Just DVDs he'd choose. He controlled every single thing I saw and heard, and he kept reinforcing the same message. Your parents are dead. Your friends have forgotten you. No one is looking for you anymore. I'm all you have. Susan Harper would have collapsed if she'd heard those words. The idea that her daughter, their beloved, brilliant Emily, had spent years believing her parents were dead was almost too cruel to comprehend. Did he ever sexually assault you? Chen asked the question carefully, knowing how difficult it was to answer. Emily's jaw tightened. No, never. That's what everyone will assume, but it wasn't like that. He wanted something else. He wanted to be my savior, my protector. He wanted me to be grateful to him, to depend on him, to love him like a father figure or something equally twisted. He'd say things like, I saved you from a world that would have destroyed your beauty and innocence. You're safe here. You're mine to protect. Did you ever try to escape? Reeves asked. Twice. The first time was maybe a year in. He'd forgotten to fully close the basement door and I managed to get upstairs. But the front door was deadbolted with a key I didn't have and all the windows had security bars. He found me within minutes. He didn't hurt me, but he cried. Actually cried. He said, Emily, why would you try to leave me? Don't you understand I'm keeping you safe? The world killed your parents. It will kill you too if you leave. Then he installed additional locks. Emily's hands had stopped trembling now. Telling the story was painful, but it was also liberating. Each word was a small act of reclaiming power. The second escape attempt was years later, maybe 2016 or 2017. I'd lost track of time by then. He'd started letting me come upstairs occasionally, always supervised. One day he had a medical emergency. I think it was a heart attack or something similar. He collapsed, and I ran. I made it outside for the first time in 5 years, but we were in the middle of nowhere, just woods and a dirt road. I ran for what felt like hours, but I had no shoes, no idea where I was going. Eventually, I collapsed from exhaustion. He found me with his truck. By then, I was almost relieved. I'd been so thoroughly broken that even freedom felt terrifying. Chen felt rage building in her chest. Rage at Pearson. Rage at a system that had failed to find Emily sooner. Rage at the injustice of stolen years that could never be returned. When did things change? Chen asked. What made you finally leave for good? Emily's expression shifted, something like determination crossing her features. 2 months ago, February 2024. We were living in Tallahassee by then. We'd moved several times over the years. He got sloppy. He left his laptop open and I saw news articles. Articles about missing persons, about my case. There were photos of my parents. Older, grayer, but alive. They were alive. Her voice broke on the word alive, and tears streamed down her face. Reeves reached across the table and squeezed Emily's hand. I realized everything had been a lie. 13 years of lies. My parents weren't dead. People had been searching for me. I hadn't been forgotten. The rage I felt in that moment it was like waking up from a coma. I started planning. I pretended nothing had changed, but I was watching, waiting for an opportunity. How did you finally get away? Chen asked. He went to work one morning. He'd been working at a warehouse, regular 9-to-5 job. He'd grown confident after all these years, less paranoid. He'd stopped locking me in. I think he genuinely believed I'd never leave, that he'd conditioned me so thoroughly that I'd stay voluntarily. But the moment his truck pulled out of the driveway, I grabbed what little I had and I ran. I walked for miles until I found a main road. Then I flagged down a woman driving by. I told her I'd been in an abusive relationship and needed help. She drove me straight to Safe Harbor House. "Why didn't you tell the shelter staff immediately who you were?" Reeves asked. Emily's laugh was bitter. "Because I didn't know if I could trust anyone. 13 years of manipulation does that to you." I kept thinking, what if this is a trap? What if he finds me? What if no one believes me? I'd spent so long being told I was nobody, that I'd been forgotten. That part of me believed it. It took days before I could even say my own name out loud. Jen pulled up a photo on her tablet, Robert Pearson's driver's license photo. "Is this the man who took you?" Emily looked at the image and her entire body tensed. "Yes, that's him. We arrested him this morning," Chen said, satisfaction evident in her voice. "He's being charged with kidnapping, false imprisonment, and multiple counts related to your abduction. He's not going to hurt anyone else ever again." Emily's shoulders sagged with relief so profound she nearly slid from her chair. "Thank you. Thank you." The interview continued for another 2 hours. Emily provided details about the various houses where she'd been kept, descriptions of Pearson's routines, information about his work history. Every detail would be used to build an airtight case against him. But beyond the legal necessity, Emily needed to tell her story. For 13 years, she'd been silenced. Now finally, she had a voice again. When the interview concluded, Chen led Emily back to the waiting room where her parents sat. David had aged another year in just these few hours, his face gray with anguish at imagining what his daughter had endured. Susan's eyes were swollen nearly shut from crying. Emily walked directly to them and collapsed into their arms once more. No words were necessary. The embrace said everything. "I'm sorry. I love you. I'm here. We survived. Can we go home?" Emily whispered. "Can we please just go home?" "Yes, baby," Susan said, stroking her daughter's short hair. "We're going home. We're all going home." The drive back to Clearwater took 4 hours, but it felt like traveling through time itself. Emily watched the Florida landscape pass by the window. The palm trees, the strip malls, the familiar Gulf Coast scenery. Everything looked the same, yet completely different. She'd left this state as a 17-year-old girl with dreams of college and journalism. She was returning as a 29-year-old woman who'd survived the unimaginable. When they pulled into the driveway of the Harper home on Sunset Point Road, Emily burst into tears. The house looked exactly as she remembered. The white siding, the blue shutters, the garden her mother had always tended with such care. It was like stepping into a memory. Inside, everything had been preserved. Emily's bedroom remained untouched, a shrine to the girl she'd been. Her cheerleading trophies still lined the shelf. Her posters still covered the walls. Even her laptop sat on the desk, though David admitted he'd charged it regularly, unable to let that connection die. Emily sat on her old bed, running her hands over the familiar comforter. "I used to dream about this room," she said softly. "In the basement, when things were really bad, I'd close my eyes and imagine being back here. Sometimes the dream was so vivid, I'd wake up confused about where I really was." Susan sat beside her daughter, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "You're here now, you're really here, and we're never letting you go again." But even as the words were spoken, everyone in that room understood the complexity of what lay ahead. Emily had been found, yes, but finding her was just the beginning. The trauma of 13 stolen years couldn't be erased with love alone. There would be therapy, legal proceedings, media attention, and the slow, painful process of learning to live again. That night, as Emily lay in her childhood bed for the first time in 13 years, she stared at the ceiling and whispered into the darkness, "I survived. I'm still here, and I'm going to make sure those years weren't lost for nothing." Outside, Clearwater slept peacefully, unaware that their most famous missing person had come home. But tomorrow, the world would know. Tomorrow, the miracle would become headlines. Tomorrow, Emily Harper would begin the next chapter of her story, not as a victim, but as a survivor. And Robert Pearson, in a Tallahassee jail cell, would face justice for every single day he'd stolen. The news broke on March 17, 2024 at 6 a.m., and within hours, it had exploded across every media platform in the country. "Miracle in Florida. Missing cheerleader found alive after 13 years," screamed the headlines. Emily Harper's 17-year-old senior photo appeared side by side with current images. The contrast jarring, heartbreaking, and ultimately triumphant. Cable news networks interrupted regular programming. Social media platforms crashed under the weight of shares and comments. The story that had haunted Clearwater for over a decade had finally reached its impossible conclusion. Detective Sarah Chen stood before a packed press conference at the Clearwater Police Department, flanked by FBI agent Patricia Reeves and Police Chief Michael Torres. Camera flashes created a strobe light effect as journalists from across the nation crowded into the room, microphones extended, notepads ready. This was the story everyone wanted. The miracle that proved hope wasn't naive, that some missing people did come home. On March 15, 2024, Chen began, her voice steady despite the chaos. Emily Harper was located at a women's shelter in Tallahassee, Florida. She is alive, she is safe, and she has been reunited with her family. Robert James Pearson, age 52, has been arrested and charged with kidnapping, false imprisonment, and multiple related felonies. This investigation remains active, and we believe there may be additional victims. The room erupted with shouted questions. Chen raised her hand for silence. Emily Harper was subjected to 13 years of psychological manipulation and captivity. She was moved multiple times across Florida to avoid detection. Mr. Pearson used sophisticated methods of control, including isolation, false information, and emotional manipulation. Emily's bravery in escaping and coming forward has been extraordinary. We are asking anyone with information about Robert Pearson's activities between 2008 and 2024 to contact the FBI immediately. We believe he may be connected to at least 3 other missing person cases in Alabama, Georgia, and Mississippi. Agent Reeves stepped forward. I want to emphasize that Emily Harper is a survivor, not a victim. She has shown incredible strength and resilience. The Harper family has requested privacy as they navigate this reunion and begin the healing process. We ask that the media respect their wishes. But privacy, in the age of social media and 24-hour news cycles, was a luxury the Harpers would never truly have again. Within hours, their Sunset Point Road address was surrounded by news vans. Reporters camped on the sidewalk. Cameras pointed at the house, hoping for a glimpse of Emily or a statement from the family. Neighbors were interviewed, former classmates were tracked down, and everyone who'd ever known Emily was suddenly thrust into the spotlight. Madison Torres's phone rang incessantly. She'd become a therapist specializing in trauma, partly inspired by her own experience after losing Emily. Now, television producers wanted her story, wanted her to describe what it felt like to have her best friend return from the dead. She declined every interview. Instead, she drove to Clearwater the moment she heard the news, arriving at the Harper home near midnight. Police officers manning the perimeter recognized her and waved her through. She knocked on the door, tears already streaming down her face. Emily opened the door herself. For a long moment, the two women just stared at each other. 17 and 29 then and now, loss and reunion all compressed into a single breathless second. "Maddie?" Emily's voice cracked. "Em, oh my God, Em." Madison pulled her into a fierce embrace, both of them sobbing, holding each other as if the world might try to tear them apart again if they let go. They talked until dawn, sitting in Emily's bedroom surrounded by the artifacts of their shared teenage years. Madison told Emily about college, about becoming a therapist, about the guilt she'd carried for 13 years. Emily told Madison about the basement, about the lies, about learning to survive one day at a time. They laughed, they cried, and they began the slow process of rebuilding a friendship that trauma had interrupted but not destroyed. "I thought about you constantly," Madison admitted. "Every client I worked with, every trauma survivor I helped, part of me was trying to help you, wherever you were." "I thought about you too," Emily said. "Pearson wouldn't let me have much contact with the outside world, but sometimes I'd imagine what you were doing. If you'd become a doctor like you always wanted." "Close enough," Madison smiled through tears. "Healing minds instead of bodies." Jake Morrison arrived the next morning, his hands shaking as he rang the doorbell. He'd driven through the night from Tampa, where he now worked as a high school football coach. When Emily answered the door, he could barely speak. "Jake," she said softly, seeing the guilt and pain etched into his features. "It's okay. I'm okay. I should have walked you to your car," he blurted out. "I should have stayed. I should have—" "Stop." Emily's voice was firm. "This wasn't your fault. It wasn't Madison's fault. It wasn't my fault. It was his fault, only his. Don't carry that guilt anymore. I won't let the people I love destroy themselves over something they couldn't control." Jake broke down, and Emily held him. This man who'd been a boy when she disappeared, who'd loved her from afar and never had the chance to tell her. They talked for hours on the front porch, away from the cameras, away from the chaos. He told her about his life, his coaching career, how he taught his players about staying together, watching out for each other, never leaving anyone behind. "You're honoring me," Emily said. "Every kid you keep safe, every lesson you teach, you're making sure what happened to me doesn't happen to someone else." Meanwhile, in Tallahassee, Robert Pearson sat in an interrogation room, his lawyer beside him. He'd refused to speak since his arrest, maintaining a stone-faced silence that investigators found both frustrating and incriminating. But Detective Chen had been building a case that didn't require his cooperation. Search warrants executed on Pearson's Tallahassee home revealed a house of horrors hidden behind suburban normalcy. The main floor appeared ordinary, modest furniture, clean kitchen, nothing remarkable. But in the basement, investigators found evidence of Emily's captivity, reinforced locks, security bars, and most damningly, a journal Pearson had kept documenting Emily's progress in accepting her new life. The journal entries were chilling in their matter-of-fact tone. Day 156. Emily ate breakfast without arguing. Progress continues. Day 423. Emily smiled today when I brought her favorite books. She's beginning to understand I'm protecting her. Day 2, 847. Emily asked about the outside world, reminded her why she's safer here with me. Chen read the entries with mounting horror. This wasn't just kidnapping. It was a systematic psychological destruction of another human being, documented like a scientific experiment. But even more damning was what they found in Pearson's storage unit, rented under a false name in a neighboring county. Boxes of newspaper clippings about missing girls, detailed notes about their schedules, their routines, their vulnerabilities, and photographs. Surveillance photos of young women from multiple states dated between 2008 and 2024. The three missing girls Agent Reeves had connected to Emily's case stared out from those photographs. Ashley Monroe from Mobile, Alabama. Brittany Chen from Savannah, Georgia. Kayla Rodriguez from Biloxi, Mississippi. All blonde, all athletic, all vanished without a trace. "We need to find them," Reeves said, spreading the photos across her desk. "If Emily survived, maybe they did too." The FBI launched a massive investigation. Every property Pearson had owned, rented, or accessed was searched. Ground-penetrating radar scanned yards and wooded areas. Cadaver dogs worked overtime, and investigators interviewed hundreds of people who'd crossed paths with Pearson over 16 years. 3 weeks after Emily's rescue, they found Ashley Monroe. She was living in a small apartment in Birmingham, Alabama, under the name Sarah Wilson. Pearson had held her captive for 4 years before she'd escaped during a medical emergency, similar to the one Emily described. But unlike Emily, Ashley had been so thoroughly broken that she'd never reported her abduction. She'd been convinced by Pearson that her family was dead, that reporting him would result in her being institutionalized, that no one would believe her story. When FBI agents knocked on her door and showed her photographs of her parents, alive, aged, but alive, she collapsed. The reunion was both joyful and devastating. Ashley was 32 now, with no education beyond high school, no work history, no identity beyond the false one Pearson had helped her create to keep her compliant and hidden. 2 weeks later, they found Brittany Chen in Atlanta, working as a housekeeper under yet another false identity. She'd escaped 3 years prior but had also been too traumatized and manipulated to seek help or reveal her true identity. Her reunion with her family was captured by news cameras, becoming another viral moment in a story that had gripped the nation. But Kayla Rodriguez was never found, despite exhaustive searches, despite Pearson's properties being torn apart, despite hundreds of tips. Nothing. The fear that haunted everyone was that she'd been Pearson's first victim, that he'd made mistakes with her that he'd learned from with subsequent abductions, that her fate had been different from the others. In a surprise move, Pearson's attorney announced his client would plead guilty to all charges in exchange for life imprisonment without parole, avoiding a trial. He would also provide information about Kayla's location in exchange for being housed in protective custody, away from the general prison population that would likely kill him for his crimes. The hearing was held on May 3, 2024. Emily, Ashley, and Brittany all attended, sitting in the front row with their families. They'd met several times by then, forming a survivor support group that would last for years to come. They held hands as Pearson was led into the courtroom in shackles, his eyes downcast, his face expressionless. Judge Margaret Simmons, a stern woman in her 60s known for harsh sentences and crimes against children, addressed Pearson directly. "Mr. Pearson, you have robbed these women of years they can never recover. You have tortured their families. You have demonstrated a level of cruelty and manipulation that defies comprehension. Before I accept your plea, do you have anything to say to your victims?" Pearson looked up for the first time, his eyes scanning the three women in the front row. Emily met his gaze without flinching, her jaw set, her spine straight. "I thought I was protecting them," Pearson said, his voice flat and emotionless. "The world is cruel. I was keeping them safe." The courtroom erupted in outrage. Judge Simmons slammed her gavel. "Mr. Pearson, that is not an apology or an explanation. That is a continuation of your delusion. I accept your guilty plea. You are hereby sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 150 years for related charges. You will serve this sentence at Florida State Prison. May God have mercy on your soul, because this court certainly will not." Pearson was led away. He never looked back. True to his plea agreement, Pearson provided a location for Kayla Rodriguez. She'd died in 2011, just months after her abduction, from an undiagnosed medical condition, diabetes that had gone untreated in captivity. Pearson had buried her in a wooded area outside Pensacola. Her remains were recovered and returned to her family for proper burial. The news was devastating but provided closure. Maria Rodriguez, Kayla's mother, stood at her daughter's grave and said words that would be quoted for years to come. "My baby is finally home. She's finally at peace. And the monster who took her will never see daylight again." That's as close to justice as we'll ever get. Back in Clearwater, Emily began the slow process of rebuilding a life that had been stolen. She enrolled in community college, starting with basic courses to ease back into education. She began intensive therapy with a trauma specialist. She wrote in journals, processing 13 years of captivity on page after page of cathartic honesty. And she started speaking publicly about her experience, not for fame or attention, but because she understood her story had power. Power to help other survivors. Power to educate families about manipulation tactics. Power to ensure that Kayla Rodriguez and others like her would not be forgotten. Susan and David Harper watched their daughter reclaim herself piece by piece. It wasn't easy. Emily had nightmares. She struggled with crowds and loud noises. She'd panic if someone stood too close or if a door was locked. But she kept fighting, kept pushing forward, kept choosing survival over surrender. One evening, 6 months after her rescue, Emily stood on Clearwater Beach watching the sunset paint the Gulf of Mexico in shades of orange and pink. Madison stood beside her, as did Jake, both of them silent, just being present. "You know what I realized?" Emily said softly. "He took 13 years from me. 13 years I'll never get back. But he didn't take everything. He didn't take my mind, my spirit, my ability to love and trust and hope. Those things survived. I survived. And that means I won." Madison squeezed her hand. "You more than survived, Em. You're thriving." "Not yet," Emily admitted. "But I will be. One day at a time, I will be." The 3 friends stood on that beach as darkness fell, connected by trauma and loss and the unbreakable bonds of people who'd been tested by the worst humanity could offer and had emerged, still believing in the best. Emily Harper had been missing for 13 years, but she'd been found not just physically but spiritually, found herself, found her strength, found her voice, and she would spend the rest of her life making sure that voice was heard. 2 years had passed since Emily Harper's rescue, and Clearwater had transformed from a town haunted by tragedy into a community celebrating resilience. It was October 14th, 2026, exactly 15 years since that fateful night when a 17-year-old cheerleader had vanished into darkness. But this anniversary would be different. This year, Emily Harper stood at a podium before hundreds of people, no longer a victim frozen in time, but a survivor ready to tell her story on her own terms. The event was held at Clearwater High School's auditorium, the same building where Emily had once practiced cheers and dreamed of college. Now 31 years old, she looked remarkably different from the haunted woman who'd emerged from Safe Harbor House 2 years prior. Her blonde hair had grown to shoulder length, styled with confidence. She wore a professional navy blue dress, minimal makeup, and an expression of calm determination. Most importantly, her eyes, those blue eyes that had once seemed hollowed by trauma, now sparkled with purpose. The auditorium was packed. Survivors of abduction and human trafficking sat in the front rows, many holding tissues, others holding hands with family members who'd never stopped searching. Behind them sat community leaders, law enforcement officials, journalists, and hundreds of ordinary people who'd followed Emily's story from disappearance to miraculous return to this moment of reclamation. Detective Sarah Chen sat beside Agent Patricia Reeves, both women visibly emotional. They'd worked hundreds of cases between them, but Emily's had changed them fundamentally. It had reminded them why they'd chosen this work, why every missing person mattered, why they could never stop fighting. Madison Torres sat with her husband, a fellow therapist she'd met during a conference on trauma recovery. She'd been Emily's anchor through 2 years of intensive therapy, court proceedings, and the overwhelming process of learning to live again. Jake Morrison sat a few rows back with his wife and 2 young children. He'd finally moved forward with his life, though Emily would always hold a special place in his heart. Not as a lost love, but as a symbol of why he coached young people with such fierce protectiveness. David and Susan Harper sat in the very front row, their hands clasped together. David had recovered fully from his stroke, motivated by the miracle of his daughter's return. Susan had started a foundation for families of missing persons, channeling her pain into purpose. They'd aged beyond their years, but their faces radiated pride as they watched Emily approach the microphone. Emily looked out at the sea of faces and took a deep breath. For 13 years, Robert Pearson had controlled her voice, her choices, her very identity. For 2 years since her rescue, she'd been finding that voice again. Today, she would use it in ways she'd once only dreamed possible. 15 years ago tonight, Emily began, her voice steady and clear. I made a decision that changed my life. I got into a car with a man I didn't know because I believed my parents were dying and needed me. That decision led to 13 years of captivity, manipulation, and psychological torture. For many years, I blamed myself for that choice. I told myself I should have been smarter, more careful, less trusting. She paused, scanning the audience. But I've learned something through therapy and through connecting with other survivors. We cannot blame ourselves for the evil actions of predators. Robert Pearson was a master manipulator who studied vulnerable moments and exploited them with precision. I was 17 years old, terrified for my parents, and presented with what appeared to be a legitimate police officer. I made the choice any loving daughter would make. I tried to get to my family. Applause rippled through the auditorium. Emily smiled slightly, gathering strength from the support. I want to talk about what survival really means, she continued. For 13 years, people assumed I was dead. My face was on missing person posters, on news broadcasts, on websites dedicated to unsolved cases. My parents held candlelight vigils every year. My friends carried guilt they never should have carried. The community searched beaches and swamps and never stopped hoping. But I was alive. Trapped, yes, but alive. And every single day, I made the choice to stay alive. Her voice grew stronger. Pearson used psychological tactics designed to break me. He told me my parents were dead. He isolated me from any outside information that would contradict his narrative. He created a reality where he was my savior and the world was my enemy. And for many years, I believed him. That's what manipulation does. It rewrites your understanding of truth until you can't distinguish lies from reality. Emily's eyes found Ashley Monroe and Brittany Chen in the third row, both women nodding encouragingly. They'd become like sisters, bonded by shared trauma and collective healing. But here's what Pearson didn't count on: the human spirit's capacity for resilience. Even in that basement, even during the years when I believed my family was gone, something inside me refused to completely surrender. I would remember my mother's laugh. I would recall my father's terrible jokes. I would think about my best friend Madison and the dreams we'd shared. Those memories became my lifeline, proof that I'd once been loved, that I'd once mattered, that I was more than what my captor told me I was. Susan Harper wiped tears from her eyes, her hand trembling as David squeezed it tighter. The day I saw that news article on Pearson's laptop, the day I realized my parents were alive, something fundamental shifted. The rage I felt was consuming, yes, but it was also clarifying. I realized I'd been robbed, not just of years, but of truth. And I decided in that moment that I would reclaim both. Emily's voice took on an edge of steel. Escaping wasn't easy. I'd spent 13 years being conditioned to fear the outside world, to believe I was safer in captivity than in freedom. Walking out that door required me to override every psychological barrier Pearson had built. But I did it. And that first breath of truly free air, that moment when I knew I'd made the choice to save myself, that was when I stopped being a victim and became a survivor. The applause was thunderous now. People rose to their feet, and Emily had to pause, overwhelmed by the response. When the crowd settled, she continued, "Recovery has been harder than captivity in some ways. In captivity, I knew what to expect. The same four walls, the same routine, the same lies. Freedom meant facing everything I'd lost. 13 years of experiences, education, relationships, growth. I was 29 years old with the life experience of a 17-year-old. I had to learn to use a smartphone, understand social media, navigate a world that had changed dramatically. I had to confront the reality that my parents had aged, that my friends had moved on with their lives, that the girl I'd been no longer existed." She looked directly at Madison. "But I also discovered that love doesn't have an expiration date. My parents never stopped being my parents. My best friend never stopped being my best friend. The community that had searched for me welcomed me back with open arms. And I met two incredible women, Ashley and Brittany, who understood my experience in ways no one else could. We've built something beautiful from our shared trauma, a support network, advocacy work, and a commitment to helping others trapped in situations like ours." Emily pulled out a piece of paper from her pocket. "I want to share something I wrote in therapy last year. My therapist asked me to write a letter to my 17-year-old self, the girl waiting outside that gymnasium on October 14th, 2011. This is what I wrote. Dear Emily, in a few minutes, a man will approach you with a lie that will steal 13 years of your life. You will make a decision based on love and fear, and you will suffer for it in ways you cannot imagine. But I want you to know something. You survive. You endure things that would break most people, and you emerge with your humanity intact. You will lose years, yes, but you will gain wisdom, strength, and a purpose that will help countless others. You will learn that survival is not passive. It's an active choice made every single day. You will discover that trauma does not define you. How you respond to trauma defines you. And most importantly, you will learn that coming home isn't just about returning to a physical place. It's about finding yourself again after being lost. So when you get into that car, know this. It's not your fault. You are not responsible for the evil of others. And 15 years from now, you will stand before a room full of people and tell them that hope is not naive, that survival is possible, and that reclaimed lives can be beautiful. I love you. Your future self, Emily." There wasn't a dry eye in the auditorium. Even hardened law enforcement officers wiped their faces discreetly. Emily folded the letter and looked up. "I share my story not for sympathy but for purpose. There are thousands of missing persons, taken, trapped, or lost to crises. Each has a family waiting. Never stop searching. My parents searched for 13 years, and they found me. Miracles do happen." She turned to Detective Chen and Agent Reeves. "They never treated my case as just another file. Their work didn't just save me. It saved Ashley and Brittany and brought closure to Kayla Rodriguez's family. These women represent thousands of officers who keep fighting for forgotten victims." Then Emily addressed prevention. "Predators like Robert Pearson use impersonation, fear, isolation, and manipulation. We must teach teens to spot these tactics, verify badge numbers, question urgency, resist isolation, trust instincts. You're never alone. Help exists." Her voice softened. "To those still trapped, you're not forgotten. You are more than your captor's lies. There is a way out. Keep that spark alive until you can take it. Freedom is waiting." Applause filled the auditorium. Emily continued, "I'm writing a book. Proceeds go to the Harper Foundation for Missing Persons and Survivors. We're launching scholarships too. And next month, at 31, I start college to study journalism and psychology. I'm reclaiming the dream my 17-year-old self had." As the room rose in ovation, she said quietly, 15 years ago I didn't vanish, I was taken. 2 years ago I chose to walk away and reclaim my life. That's the power we all have, to write our own ending." Looking into the cameras, she added, "To Robert Pearson, you stole 13 years but not my future. I am Emily Harper, daughter, survivor, fighter. You failed to break me." That night outside the gym where it all began, Emily stood with Madison, Jake, Ashley, and Brittany. Her parents joined them, faces lifted to the October sky. "To new beginnings," Madison said. "To reclaimed futures," Ashley added. "To coming home," Jake murmured. Emily smiled, a real one, bright with peace. The Clearwater mystery that haunted a community for 13 years had its resolution, not the one expected, but the one needed. Proof that darkness ends, and lost people can be found. Emily Harper had found herself. As they walked away, Emily glanced back once more. "Thank you," she whispered to her younger self, "for surviving, for believing we'd make it home. Then she turned toward the future, uncertain but hers, and stepped into the Florida night, no longer shadowed by fear, but lit by possibility.